years ago, that was pretty normal, right? You know, you go to a
Totally.
normal bar, it's like $2-3 for a beer. Everybody's kind of chilling and hanging out, and it doesn't really happen anymore.
Well, if you go back even farther, like our parents had no idea where we were at all times of the day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very different
The 80s,
experience.
man.
You know, now we can track our kids and know exactly how fast they're going in their car.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can also control your kids' telephones, you know? There's smartphones and iPads and laptops and Xboxes and game stations. Shit, that's a lot of devices. Yeah.
Honestly, it's not even been that long. My oldest son just recently got into The Office. And even as that's not that long ago, what, 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. You look at some of those episodes, they didn't have phones, and the phones they did have were janky. You know, they weren't taking pictures of stuff. They weren't on them all the time. It was kind of like, whoa, it really wasn't that long ago that we weren't.
So you know, Kyle, 2008, that was like 15 years ago.
I know, okay. But in the spectrum of things, you think The Office, you think that's not that long ago, but so yeah, that kind of threw me off. I was like, man, nobody's on the phone, even on this show.
Yeah.
Kind of weird.
I always say that I was born in 1999. So technically I was raised in the early 2000s, which theoretically was the 90s. Let's just be honest. But when you got to that period of 2009, 2010, I very vividly remember that boom. What do I mean by boom? Literally January of 2010 all the way to December of 2010. Every fucking month was cheaper TVs, brand new iPad, brand new iPhones, brand new smartphones, brand new electronic devices, noise cancellation headphones. All of this shit, things that were considered extreme luxuries no one had, nobody could afford. All of a sudden 2010 runs around, everyone has one. Yeah. Everybody has an iPad. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody. It's crazy.
Yeah, and if it's not an Apple brand, around Christmas they've basically given them away. Tablets, they're so cheap. We've got so many of those laying around our house that we've got for our kids over the years. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, where we grew up, our age, Kyle and I's age. I'm 46. Kyle's 45.
I wouldn't have guessed, but yeah.
Right there, that time. I heard Nate Bargatze, a comedian, talk about just that generation right there. We're Gen X, but we're almost millennials. So we're right there in kind of that mix. And in there's this gap age. They talk about this gap generation. Some people call it the Oregon Trail generation, but he was calling it, saying that there's another group called the Lucky Ones. And the reason why they're called that is because we grew up with no electronics. We grew up with maybe, Atari or Nintendo.
Pong.
Yeah, we grew up, at the very beginning, Pong, but then Super Mario Brothers, that was us. Donkey Kong at the Pizza Hut, that was us. But that was still not something that you necessarily took home with you just yet. And so as we grew up, technology showed up. So we kind of get the mix of best of the both worlds. We got to be in the go play outside and, make something up with your imagination. And here's technology. It's about to change the world. We got to experience both those things.
It's amazing. I mean, and again, we're what we're talking about is not even 100 years. We're talking about what, 33 years?
Yeah.
Time
is compounding on itself, right?
But it's been a very dramatically incredible increase. I mean, I've had artists on this podcast, and I've even had people, for example, working in the industry. The way that everything has changed, not even rapidly. I mean, we're talking about 180 degrees, completely in the opposite direction. Who would ever think that in 2024 we would be at this point that we are in regards to the entertainment industry across the charts?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
It's not just bizarre. It's kind of fascinating because, used to, you get interviewed for a job and they want to know if you are proficient with a particular type of software. But now they're really looking to see whether or not you can adapt, because every 6 months, every year, there's more changes, more difference. I mean, with the song industry in particular, the use of AI and how you use it and what it looks like, and is it art or is it not art? And then even when you get into work and what the AI, artificial intelligence, is doing for computers and for even writing and for content, you know, it is radically different every few months when we live right now.
Doesn't look like it's slowing down. Can I ask you guys a question? I know you guys are definitely storytellers for sure. You were talking about earlier about how the change of technology has had an effect on you. How would you say, like, pertaining to music? Because I know that, like, everybody has seen definitely that change in how music has gone, like, for example, even with the rap industry and hip hop and country and so on. But one of the coolest things is that I've had people on my podcast are solely independent artists.
Mm-hmm.
So they have no label, they do everything themselves, and they're their own producers. So it's like, wait a minute, so and their music is fucking fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you don't have any label? No.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Try to imagine that for a second. Like, imagine like going up to somebody like and be like, "So you're a professional musician?" Yes. So who's your label? No, I'm my label. What? How does that work?
My daughter is, I guess she could be considered a recording artist. She's brand new, and we've been recording an album, and her album sounds fantastic. I mean, it is crazy amazing. It sounds like there are 17 musicians on this track, and all the things and all the harmonies and all the levels and all the rock and drums and everything. And we went to this dude's house in East Nashville, and he started working on his computer. He'd pull out an instrument, he'd play one, then he'd put down another instrument, play another one. And like, he created a wall of sound in a 12 by 14 living room. I mean, that was it. And so that kind of thing is amazing. Like, you no longer have to go to a giant studio. You are simply going to somebody's house, and they're creating magic right there with you. Like, we sang in the kitchen. Like, she sang on the couch in the living room where he was recording the other stuff. And it sounds like $1 million. It's crazy. And Kyle, I was going to ask you, you kind of had a very particular, I think we're out of the time where you could get prosecuted for this, but like in Trustful, you were at the very cusp. Like, the thing, Dave, that's crazy is like, we didn't just experience music in the way that you're talking about now, but we experienced time where the only way you could hear a whole album was by purchasing the CD or going to a friend's house and listening to it.
Or so getting a tape or getting a vinyl.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But tapes were not cool, and vinyls, forget it. It was like CDs were the coolest thing ever. We had these Bibles that opened up and had 78 CDs in them.
The black books.
Yeah. And so Kyle was at the cusp in Trustful, Alabama, single guy living by himself. You want to talk about what happened to you, buddy?
Oh man, I became so proficient in Napster. Like, I was
like,
I was the guy Metallica was coming after. Like, I was that guy. But I mean, we've seen it all over. That's kind of what's cool about Jay and I's generation is when we were born, it was 8 tracks, and then it went. I mean, vinyl was around, but like, vinyl was there. 8 tracks, went to tapes, went to CDs, went to mini discs, which weren't that was sort of not many many people had that.
They and sucked.
Then it went all so digital.
Bad.
Yeah, they were terrible. But it went all digital. You could burn your own. I remember when you could burn your own CD. Thinking like, man, I don't have to listen to every song on the thing. I can take the ones I want and I can slap them on a CD. And now I got a mixtape that's actually a CD. I felt so cool doing that. Back in '97 or 98, whatever it was. I mean, we've seen so much change, and now it's like all digital. And Jay and I are very different. Jay is always on the cutting edge, man. I stopped updating my personal like technology iOS in 2007. Like, if it's happened since then, man, I don't know it. I don't know how to do it. Like, I'm still like, hey, where's the thing on my computer I could stick my CD in so I could give it to my iTunes catalog? I'm like, I'm that dude.
Yeah, Kyle, I hate to break it to you, but iTunes was discontinued like 2 or 3 years ago.
It hurts, man. It hurts so bad.
It really does.
But I mean, I dabble in Spotify. I'm not like, I'm not that much of a dinosaur.
No,
but
isn't that weird though? Because like I remember when like you had to like bootleg me. I used so when I was a kid, we used to bootleg music. So, I had an iPod, and we had a kid in school. He was a piece of shit, and he still is a piece of shit. He would he would bootleg. So like you would give him your iPod, and he would terrible guy. Like he would give you terrible songs, absolutely shitty. But he was like the only one in the class that had a computer that had internet access, and he had the ability to like burn things and put things on MP3 player. To think that that was my music like hub, was that fucking shitty, 5, 6 in 7th grade, 300 and something pounds. I'm not even shitting you.
The beast.
The beast. Yeah, exactly, my man. There you go.
Hey, listen, Jay and I are the generation though where you had to sit there next to the radio with your tape player, and like, okay, I think this is it. I think this is it. Boom, hit, and you hit record when the song you wanted to come on, and you just held it next to the radio. You recorded the song as it played, and then when the song was over, you stopped it. You're like, oh man, now I got the song I want. Now I get my memory of that was Will Smith. He did this Nightmare on Elm Street song. You've probably never heard it. You're way too young, but like with Freddy Krueger and all that stuff. And like, I thought that was the coolest song. It was kind of creepy, like, I got to find that song. So when it came on, I recorded it. Let's do it over and over again. I think I destroyed that tape. Man,
damn.
I hadn't thought about that in ages.
Look at this. We're doing a little reminiscing over here.
We're lost in a groove, man. We're lost in a groove.
Kyle, when did you get your first boombox?
Hey, I never really had a boombox. I had a mini boombox. Not quite.
Oh, you were one of those cool kids. Damn.
I had the little one. I did not have the Say Anything. In your eyes.
I had one of those. It was awesome.
Never had that. I had
a
little
killer mixtapes with the two.
With the double
two
deck.
tape decks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're basically over here. Jay was like the cool, like bomb motherfucker with like the big boom box, with like Nas and like full blast, just walking by. And Kyle had a little tiny thing with Donna Summer.
Donna Summer. Oh, come on, man.
I'm sorry, man.
That hurts.
Sorry, man. But Donna Summer's fucking awesome, man. She's a good singer.
I will survive. That's
I
my.
will survive.
That's my motto.
Oh my god. Let me ask you guys something. What kind of work have you guys been recently working on? Just out of curiosity, or anything that you're working towards this year, like any future projects?
Well, we've written this book, The Dead Rock Stars. That's our big thing. Came out last November. It's our first novel that we wrote together. So we collaborated and wrote this thing together. Came out in November. Man, we're super excited about it. You're trying to let everybody know about it. How to get into this world we've created, this universe we created. We think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and the other thing though, like if you're talking about future projects, we're learning all of this on the fly. Like we started doing podcasts a couple of months ago. This is probably our 15th, 16th podcast that we've done, and it's pretty early in the world of podcasting. We're learning how to do marketing. We're learning how to kind of constantly be pushing our book, because as we talked about the music industry changing, the book industry has changed quite dramatically. Like an author doesn't just give a book to a publisher and then they do the rest. Like if the author isn't pushing the book, it's not happening. And so we've kind of got our marketing hat on right now, and neither of us are particularly proficient in that. We're learning, but that's the thing that we've had to focus on. And, our book is it's a universe we've kind of created. And with that, we have plans for future books, but we haven't even been able to turn our attention to that because, it's like drinking from a fire hydrant is kind of what's going on right now with us when it comes to how we're marketing this book and what we're doing.
I think that's I think it's amazing. I think this is a really great point and perspective that nobody would have thought about 60 years ago. If you would have asked somebody in 1964, what do you think would have been the biggest advancement for human beings? No one would say podcasting, because they couldn't fathom that. I mean, they could have fathomed, like maybe FaceTime or possibly watch that you can call somebody on, or maybe, but they could never fathom something like that, like this. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, you watch 2001 Space Odyssey, came out in 1969. They FaceTime in that movie. James Bond had he had a watch he could speak to, and these movies came out in the 60s, and I know there were novels written before then. So I mean, yeah, you're right. Those are technological things that people could conceive, but to think, a couple of guys are gonna in different places. They're gonna have a conversation. They're gonna talk. They're gonna talk about music and how things have changed and all that stuff. and we're going to throw it out on this thing to the world. We're going to broadcast it to the world. Man, they couldn't have imagined that. Maybe they, limited to the radio, even that has a signal. You can only go so far. Man, this can go. Somebody could take this to space and listen to it. I mean, that's so cool when you think about it.
If you said that same shit in like 1967, they would be like, dude, how much fucking LSD are you on?
Yep.
Right, man?
Out of your mind. You're out of your mind.
Yeah, they'd be like, what the fuck? Like, are you tripping balls? We're all about the artist. That is the whole purpose of this podcast, period. And you have a really valuable tool. You can share this with artists, people that are creative, someone that can enjoy this podcast and really enjoy the experience of Lost in the Groove. So, with that, let's jump back to today's episode, shall we? Balls or something?
Be careful talking to that Kyle guy. He's weird.
Oh my god. So, question for you guys. So, Dead Rock Stars. A little bit of an introduction to the book.
Yeah, Jay, go
Let's
for it.
Go first.
I've talked too much. You go for it.
No, that's good.
Hey.
Kyle and I met in college, and so we've been really close friends since like 96. And because of that, like 3 years before you were born, by the way, Dave. So we've been really close ever since then. And there was this phase in our life where we were both commuting. And during that commute to work, we would usually talk to each other in the mornings. Now, we didn't talk about, our lives or our heart or how we were feeling. We didn't talk about our families. We talked about movies. We talked about books. We talked about music. We talked about whatever we wanted to talk about that necessarily that itch wasn't being scratched elsewhere. And so we were two nerds in the car talking about Star Trek or talking about whatever the thing that is that we wanted to talk about. And absolutely live long and prosper. One morning, one of the things we used to do is we'd watch a TV series, we'd watch a movie, and we'd always be like, man, this doesn't make, like Lost was one of those examples where Lost took off, and the very first season of Lost was phenomenal. And the farther it got along, they created...
The plane crash?
Yeah.
I remember Lost.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Great show.
It was a fucking amazing show. It got weird. It got very weird and bizarre in the last two seasons.
Yes, that's my point. Very much so towards the end of it, they didn't know what they were doing. They were just making stuff up, trying to land the plane. And probably poor choice of words for that show. But whatever the case, Kyle and I picked apart continuity. We picked apart plot holes. We picked apart those kind of things. And Kyle's a lot better at it than I am, because sometimes I'll be like, dude, it's a movie. Like, just relax, buddy. But we would do those kind of things. And one morning, on occasion, we would pitch each other ideas. And one morning, Kyle had this idea for a story, and we talked about it as a movie to begin with, or as a graphic novel or something like that. But he had this idea for a story, and I was kind of shocked by it. You wanna give it a pitch, Kyle?
Yeah. So I'd always thinking about what's a cool story, what's a cool something that anyone could get into. And, I read this article about this plane that crashed in a swamp, and they never found the plane, because the swamp just swallowed it, just submerged, and there's no way they could get it out. And I started thinking about that, and I was like, man, what if everybody on that plane was actually, became secret agents or something, something crazy. And so my mind started they didn't really die. They faked their deaths, and that's why they can't find the plane. And so my mind started going who could do that? What could create that type of scenario that would be real? I thought, man, what about rock stars? What about these rock stars who, real life people who tragically died way too soon? What if they didn't? What if they faked their deaths? Everybody's always said for years, Elvis is still alive, but what if they're right? What if he really is still alive? What if, a lot of these people are fake their deaths to become secret agents and without anyone else in the world knowing, kind of like the Men in Black, they're the ones who secretly keep the world safe, and keep the bad things from happening. And so that was kind of the pitch I gave him, and he loved it. He got really excited about it right out of the chute. Jay's famous line. What'd you say, Jay?
It's okay. I think it's $1 billion idea, and I think it's a huge idea. But more importantly for Kyle and I, it's a universe. That concept, that idea is a universe that we get to play in. It's an alternative history that we get to create, and so there are certain rules, like who's in it, how they died. We made some choices about who we put in the book and who we didn't, based on the, whatever. And then there's also this kind of rule of we want to treat these people with care. Like we're not interested in like, I don't know, besmirching their name. Like we're interested in like caring for them because these are people that we love, people that we cared about, and people that a lot of generations of folks have cared about. So much so that they still tell stories. Like, you know, you could Google Tupac still alive, and there'd be images of, you know, him on some island that they saw him, you know, or whatever. And so
very pixelated.
Yes, very pixelated, just like Bigfoot.
Right,
Kyle. Why don't we have Bigfoot in our story? We got to do that, man.
Hey. We should.
Which version? You know, there's different generations of Bigfoot at this point.
Yeah.
By the way, actually, I heard that the Bigfoot was an actual real creature. Like hundreds of thousands of years ago, it was this like mammal that would walk on its twos. So that tendency. And the other interesting thing that I never even thought about is grizzly bears have a tendency of walking on their feet. So a lot of times what people may be thinking as Bigfoot may just be a grizzly bear. Have you ever seen a grizzly bear standing?
Humongous.
They're like fucking 8 feet.
Yeah.
Huge.
I just saw a raccoon walk across a Ring doorbell on his front hand. So, I mean, I believe anything could happen.
Hey, I love that. Oh my God, raccoons are like little bandits. They're cute, but like deadly. They're like, look at my eyes. There's a reason why I look like I have a mask on. You know what's interesting? Because like talking about like dead rock stars, this podcast, one of my inspirations for this podcast was Freddie Mercury, John Lennon, and David Bowie. They're all dead.
3 of the best.
And they all die tragic deaths. One liver cancer, one that was shot by a fat white person, and the other one that died, unfortunately, of AIDS. And isn't it like, I sometimes ask myself the question, like, what if they didn't die? What if I could have interviewed each one of them? What could of those interviews possibly have been like? You know what I mean?
All 3 of them would have been radically different. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think Freddie Mercury would have probably said honey way too much on this podcast.
I think David Bowie would have figured out whatever way to mess with you and said the opposite of whatever you thought, probably.
For sure, man. But we all know, like, any podcast with David Bowie is not substance free. Like, there's a curtain going down. Yes. There's like a shaman with like red robes coming out. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? It's like, let it happen.
You know, but that's really kind of some of the inspiration for our book is our book is set in 1999. I don't know if we said that yet. So the year you were born, man. It's set the year you were born.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's you, buddy. You were our inspiration.
Thank you. But, it's my honor.
Some of it was, you know, imagining what would these people be like you said, if they hadn't died, you know, and if they had chosen to walk away from their careers, from their families, their lives, everything, to go be, you know, secret heroes, secret agents, you know, that keep the world safe, that save the world. You know, a lot of these people, they thought, John Lennon, great example, he thought, man, my music's going to save the world. You know, rock and roll is going to save the world. And, you know, what if he became convinced that music's not going to do it? You gotta take action in another way. And what if that's motivated him to stage this whole death thing? And, you know, I mean, that don't want to get into too much of the particulars, but
this is just like a stoner thought that's coming to my mind. Can you imagine like having a time machine and like taking an A-Team going back to 1980 and just like storming fucking Dave Chapman, you know, in the hotel? And it's like, all right, motherfucker, we know what you're doing, you know, like full like Pulp Fiction, you know, with the Psalms, you know what Samuel Jackson did, the full thing, you know, and then like, shh. But yeah, that's honestly like, that would be fucking awesome, you know? Or that's like you said, you know, like you go back in time and like you have these secret agents that like figure out different. Didn't they had a TV show recently that they did, I think with Lerman or something. It's where they were targeting Nazis.
What was it? Are you thinking of Inglourious Bastards with
No. But it was like this hypothetical scenario of if people could have, It was a hypothetical scenario if you can have a group of people be able to target these Nazis.
Was it Mine Hunters with Al Pacino? Is that what you're talking about?
I think so.
I don't know if
Maybe.
it's Mine Hunters. What was it called? Something. But Al Pacino was like he was leading a group of people. It was right after. It was maybe in this. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was these Nazis that had kind of infiltrated America. They'd come in and become engineers and become all these things. And so this group of regular civilians were going out and they were taking care of the Nazis behind the scenes.
I think I remember hearing about that.
I think it was maybe Mine Hunters.
Maybe that's what the rock stars are doing. They're taking care of the Nazis.
Well, they're definitely saving the world behind the scenes, and nobody knows it. That's for sure.
Taking care of everything.
Michael Jackson's just like, through the whole thing.
He is one of the ones that comes up the most. He's not in the book because he died in 08 or 09. I think 09. I can't remember. So yeah, we get to well, it starts in 99. We'll just say it starts in 99.
It's called Hunters. I went and found it. Called Hunters.
Yeah.
Great title. Wow.
Yeah.
Just one word.
Mm-hmm.
But that's Quentin Tarantino. That's 2 or 3 of his movies. Reimagining how it could have ended. Like Inglourious Bastards was one of them. They shoot up
Django.
Hitler, and and Django, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He reimagines how things could have ended or maybe should have ended in his mind. And so that's kind of what we're doing a little bit. We're reimagining what could have happened if these people didn't die, and what would their lives look like, man? They had some demons. They all had demons, so how would they fight off those demons to be proficient secret agents? You know what I mean? Like how would they live in a way that was how would they learn the skills to be a secret agent and all that stuff? So yeah, it's kind of fun. It's a different idea, but it's kind of fun.
Well, we also grew up with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, being the one man that wipes out 100 people in a movie. Like we were always like, John Wick, except cheesier is kind of what our world was like growing up. And so,
and bigger muscles.
You add that to Men in Black, and you add that to the Kingsman, and you add that to these stories, and there's kind of this place where I think we as a culture love thinking about somebody being behind the scenes saving the day. And for us, like Kyle said, a lot of these people met tragic deaths. And so we wanted to kind of give them a second chance. Like, what if the world was so kind to them and it got so sideways that they were able to get cleaned up, or they were able to kind of have a second chance, and they decided to give back to the world. And so they're no longer performing for everyone. They're instead using their talents, using their gifts, using who they are to be able to help others in a very selfless kind of way. And so, our world is silly. Our world is stupid, but it's very much a second chance for all these people to have kind of a extra life. Like we don't know what Elvis Presley was like at 60. Like we don't know, what Tupac or Biggie would have been like with, safety and peace. Like what could they have done? What could they have created? What if they weren't constantly looking over their shoulder? What if that world wasn't who they were? And it's really fun to put them in this secret agent world where they're behind the scenes protecting things, because, the year that you were born was one of those great transition years, like we talked about at the beginning. All this technology was happening, and there's also a lot of fear in the world about that technology. And so the Dead Rock Stars are kind of grappling with that and dealing with that. And it's a really important time in our history, because collected information is piling on itself to where people are advancing technology so fast that technology is the true rock star and they don't know what to do with it.
Right. It's it's an interesting thought to ponder on, because I can say from my own personal experience, I lost my father a few years ago. And one of the conversations I've had, thank you, my man. The thing that I've always had is, like, for example, conversations with my family, especially like my siblings. And the number one conversation that we like talk about is realistically knowing my dad. He passed away at 63. We genuinely knew that he wasn't going to live a long life. Like we already were prepared that he might pass away somewhere in his 70s. So in our heads, like as a family, we kind of knew like what predicament he was in. And sometimes I kind of think to myself, like, you think about like Iman, David Bowie's wife. She probably knew and was prepared, with his situation, what was going on. And it's a hard thing also to think about, that when there is a tragedy, when somebody goes through something really hard, there is this process of like preparation for the loved ones of like, we know, and we've kind of accepted this to a certain degree. It's something that I don't feel is necessarily always discussed clearly. It's kind of pushed to the side. It's like, oh, tragedy, and like this could have never happened. But we don't. We definitely didn't feel that way.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think that our book is complete nonsense and ridiculously, and it's supposed to be fun.
Oh, for sure. I'm
But
just being
these
a
real-
philosophical stoner.
Yeah. Well, that's what that's what it's kind of getting at. I was going to say, like, while the book is that way, it's dealing with really heavy stuff. And there's the heavy stuff on the outlines of kind of what has happened in their lives and what happened in real life. And one of the things that I don't think anybody really wants to talk about is that death is something that comes for everyone, and we don't ever want it to show up. And it doesn't matter how many times people tell us that it's coming or to be prepared, whatever that's like. I mean, there's that moment where it's happened and they're gone, and you don't escape it. Like, it lives with you. And unfortunately, Dave, you're probably never going to be quite the same because of that loss. I mean, you'll be different, you'll grow, you'll change, but that loss impacts you. Like, your father in his life or whatever he was to you, like, that's a significant thing, and it should be recognized and it should be talked about, and it should be okay to kind of discuss pain, because we all are going to experience it if we haven't already.
Right. What you thinking, Kyle? I know there's a lot of things going on in your mind.
My wheels are always turning, man. My wheels are always turning. Yeah. No, man, it's when you the way you described your situation was, you felt like you began a process of preparation, and I've lost within the last 8 years my last two remaining grandparents, and both of them, one diagnosed and suffered from Alzheimer's, and the other one kind of just had dementia, which accompanies old age. They were both late 80s, early 90s. Um, so we were in that process as well. No, we're gonna lose them. It could happen at any time. But when it comes, there's when you get that call, there's nothing that you can really do to completely prepare yourself for the reality, that
No.
yeah, they're gone. And you have those moments you hang on to. My grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, I remember the last time she called me by my name, like that meant so much to me, because that was the last time she recognized me and knew who I was, and even though we had interactions beyond that time, she didn't know who I was. I could tell stories about myself, and she could remember the little boy that she had those memories with, but she couldn't put it together that little boy is this grown man that's talking to her right now, and so when she was gone, it's like there was a sense of sadness, but also a sense of peace, knowing that she didn't suffer from that, that debilitating disease anymore. And, so it's hard when you're walking through that, even if you're prepared, it's hard. Or if the day is coming, even still when it comes, it's tough.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I definitely like, even to elaborate on that point, it's where you're right. You can't like 100% like prepare, and like kind of touching also again on like with rock and rollers. I was talking about this the other day. We're talking about like Freddie Mercury, for example. If you truly want to understand of like, in my perspective, like the very last song, which was Mother, you listen to that song and you're like, okay, he really is truly gone. Like, he died in 1992 and it's over. And in my head, I've always accepted that Queen is over. That they existed all the way up until 1992, but it's very strange in how their ghost still continues to this day in a completely different variation. Almost in a way like what you were saying is like paying that respect to these dead rock and rollers. But then there's that opposite of where it's not paying respect, it's paying respect to a ghost, creating something that should have never existed to begin with.
How do you feel about I've seen Brian May my YouTube algorithm knows me, man, and so it's bringing up clips of dead rock stars and stuff. And so I've seen a clip of Brian May doing a duet with a video of Freddie from the '80s or the '70s, maybe even, where Freddie sings the song and Brian May, plays along with him. But it's sort of but this was like last year,
They never see. This is the thing. They never let go because like Brian May, John Deacon, and Roger Taylor, they're all very talented instrumentalists. If they would have, what's it called? Not the Smiths. The one with. Oh my God, my brain. I'll think of it in a second. It's one of those bands. It was with I think Ian Curtis. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
He committed suicide.
Yeah.
Their song, which is Atmosphere and Transmission. I'm trying. No. Oh my God. Division?
Joy Division.
Joy Division.
Joy Division.
Joy
Yeah.
Division. Damn. Okay. When Joy Division, when Ian Curtis, committed suicide, the band members, what they decided to do was they weren't continue Joy Division. They said, you know what? We're going to go in and they did. They went in a completely different opposite direction and it was fantastic. I mean, you got a whole different, but I'm not criticizing Queen. What I'm saying is that you have these really talented instrumentalists that they could have had the opportunity to say, you know what? Freddie died. It's very unfortunate. We're all really talented. Let's do something.
Yeah.
They could have had a Beatles moment, or they could have collabed with other artists and start something, but they didn't.
Well, it's kind of like Dave Grohl, I mean, he didn't try to keep Nirvana going. He created Foo Fighters.
There you go.
Like he did something new, did something different. And that's cool. I mean, Kurt was probably the as the songwriter and all that. He's probably kind of the heart and soul of that band, so it'd be hard to keep that going. But
I'm more on Dave Grohl's side, but sure.
I've never thought of that though. Like should a band that loses somebody, should they cease to be that band and press on as something else, as a different entity? That's kind of cool to think about. Never thought of it that way.
Jay, what are you thinking?
I think that unfortunately commercialism and real life and living probably makes more decisions than taste or thoughtfulness. And I think Dave Grohl was probably young enough that he was adaptable and malleable. And I think some of these guys in Queen that had already had a life and experience and had, they had been around the world singing these greatest songs and done all the things, the thought of not doing that way was too much for them. And so they get kind of stuck in a pattern of, we need money and we need to be able to continue to live. And we love this so much. This wasn't just Freddie's, it was ours. And so we want to keep playing those songs, and we're going to make it more of a tribute than we are going to make. I mean, I don't think, does Queen make new music? I don't know.
Yeah. Adam Lambert was their singer for a time, but was he just like the karaoke, was he just, or is he still their singer? I don't
sure care. I really, I don't care.
Hit a sore spot. Sorry, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's okay because like I'm a kind of like I'm a dead hard like rock and roll fan, and I'm one of those kind of people that there are so many other bands that went through not exactly but very similar predicaments to Queen. The Beatles, okay? The Rolling Stones. Guess what? Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Yes. They're still a part of the Rolling Stones fucking 62 years later. Okay? So it's like, I get that. The whole commercializing and, the adaptability of surviving. But isn't the whole great thing about rock and rollers is the fact that they're wild fucking people out there making crazy music or something that's just inspiring. And there's just a story there that you can grow with. And it's like, again, no shame. It's like, what are you doing? Like,
you're trying to make money is what you're trying to do.
I understand that, man.
But that's it. I mean, that's the motivation. I think, I mean, I don't want to, and there are other people that aren't like you that they want to go back and try to relive the moment. If Freddie's gone, let's get as close as we can get. And they're trying to relive kind of that moment or that experience. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's, the way it should be. I think you're right. I think how Dave went is the way to go.
Hey, it's Dave, and I quickly just wanted to jump in and say, if you've been enjoying the podcast, enjoying this episode, if you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that'll be so greatly appreciated. Because here's the thing. Someone might read that review and make the choice if they want to listen to the podcast. You get to help grow this podcast with us. How fucking cool is that? Let's jump back to today's episode.
But, the music industry right now, they don't find great music and then promote it. That's not how it works anymore. How it works now is an independent artist has to go and create who they are, create what they're doing, and create a fan base. And at that point, when they are profitable, that's when a music record label wants you. And so it's not about, is this amazing? It's about, can you market yourself? And that's why we have so much kind of crappy music that lives in the world, is because it's no longer about the art. It's about commerce, and it's about making money. And I think with a lot of these people and a lot of these record labels who have interest in the publishing rights to these songs, like for these songs to continue to get sung, for them to continue to get played, continues to bring the money in the door. And so it's about money.
Wow. That was a very straightforward,
And
non-negative, to the face point of perspective. You're definitely you're right. And you do definitely bring a good point up. I mean, at this point, artists have a choice. You can go through major labels, but you can also go through independent artists. But the problem is that you still run into the same issue. Like, I've seen it more than I can even count. How many songs that are, quote unquote popular, and it's like because of the sound, or because they were gender neutral in their lyrics, or some bullshit, and it's like, dude, this is shit. Like, I get it's okay and cool, but it's like a one-hit wonder. It's like, I guarantee you this person can't make anything else.
I wonder, Dave, I don't know if you're a sports fan or not, but the Super Bowl every year, they have the big halftime show, and it's always, who are they going to get? Who's it going to be? Like, in 20 years, what artist is going to be, they just going to roll Billie Eilish out there every year? Well, here's Billie again, because who else in that like mass appeal? Taylor Swift, she going to do the Super Bowl every year or whatever. I'm thinking about that because there's so much. Even now, it's like they had to go get Usher. They had to dig Usher up from somewhere to come do the Super Bowl this year. So I don't know. He may still be awesome, but I have no idea.
You just gotta brush off the dust, a little.
A little bit. Grease the joints. See if you can still
the joints.
move it.
That's right.
Yeah. Oil the joints up a little bit.
You guys remember when they had The Weeknd on for the half? Oh my god, bro! I'm telling you, I checked my joint. I was like, shit. Is this stuff laced? I like to look at the other person. Like, you're sober. What the fuck, man? Weirdest fucking shit I've ever seen in 25 minutes. I could have watched like Nosferatu from like the 20s, and that would have been like less weird.
Yeah. But I mean, like specifically, you remember it. I have no idea who was last year. No idea.
I don't remember last year. I think it was like Rihanna, and then people were like angry because she was like pregnant or something.
It was Rihanna.
It was Rihanna.
Now,
she was
the hip hop tribute with all the was it Eminem? Was he in there? Was it the Detroit hip hop?
It was Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre,
yeah.
And it was Eminem, and it was Snoop.
Oh, that was so good. Now that was, I'm not a big hip hop fan, but that was really fun. That show, and they were like dancing on top of like
Fat 50
living rooms and stuff.
Remember Fat 50 hanging upside down?
He picked up a couple more than 50 Cent.
Oh my god,
he's like $1.50 now. Yeah.
You're talking about like the people that they made the controversy. Okay, if you can think of anybody that's made controversy, is like Eminem, Snoop Dogg, like Seth Rogen. Yeah, Seth Rogen definitely is in that mix, and it's like these are people that they really don't give a shit what their producers and manager, they're like, fuck you, I'll replace you with somebody else. I love that. Can you imagine? It's like, that's,
Well,
yeah.
Seth Rogen in particular is a interesting kind of weirdo because he seems to chase after what he wants to do. But the thing is, a lot of people in the world love what he wants to do. Like, he's really kind of created that niche for himself where he knows who he is. He knows what his audience is. He knows what he's doing, and he stays in that lane. The stuff that he produces, like his company that produces stuff, is outrageous. They produce all kinds of stuff, and a lot of stuff that is actually, I find really interesting and different from what's out there right now. And so he's figuring it. He's figured it out. All of those people have, in a way, they've figured it out. Even though they have that kind of I don't care what you think attitude, like they have also figured out, something that people want.
Right.
Maybe it is authenticity. I don't know.
Kyle.
Yo.
What you thinking?
I'm going to embarrass myself here. But when you were talking about Seth Rogen, I had to think for a second. I was like, is it Seth Rogen? Is he the podcast guy, or is he the dude with the curly hair?
You thought he was Joe Rogan.
No, yeah. He does. No. Seth Rogen does do if I'm not mistaken, he does do a podcast as well.
Yeah. So Seth Rogen's the one with the curly hair, right? He's the actor. He's like nominated for several Academy Awards,
he looks hella Jewish. Let's put it like that. He looks hella Jewish.
Yeah. Prototype.
He was in the Fablemans. Yeah. That okay. But you said Seth Rogen. My mind went to Joe Rogan, and I was like, I was trying to figure out who you're talking about.
Joe Rogan is a lot less funny version of Seth Rogen, and also bald and way more jacked up.
What was that movie we saw with Seth Rogen, Jay, together in the theater with Danny McBride?
Yeah, it was Pineapple Express.
Pineapple Express.
By the way, that is the very first movie I ever got stoned to. I had a friend of mine that was a dealer, and I was like maybe 14 or 15. I don't even want to say this. I was 14 or 15 years old. And he's like, dude, you want to smoke some weed? And I was like, sure. And he's like, you want to watch really cool movies? So we got high watching other people get high. It was
James
amazing.
Franco
it was fucking amazing.
James Franco in that movie was so funny because no one knew how funny he was until he did that role. And he just, his whole like persona in that movie just cracked me up. He was hilarious.
I feel
listen to Seth Rogen's run on being a producer. Let's see if I can pull it. This is just him producing, right? He's a co-producer, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Superbad, Pineapple Express, Green Hornet. He was a producer, 50-50 with the guy with three names. I get the Robin. What's his name? I can't think of his name. John Gordon-Levitt.
From Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah.
Joseph.
Yeah. And then you got This Is the End. You've got The Interview. And then it gets into
The Interview is really good.
Yeah. TV stuff that he starts to do. He does Preacher. He does Future Man. He does Good Boys. That's a movie. And then he does The Boys. That's him. The Boys from Amazon, the big giant boys thing.
Have you guys seen that?
I've watched a couple seasons of it, yeah.
Bro, that literally changes your mind on superheroes. Like,
yeah, it's good.
I cannot look at Marvel the same way anymore. It's like, oh my God, they're fucking bitches. They're fucking assassins.
Catch this, though. Seth Rogen wrote and produced the most recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Get out of here.
He did a voice. He was one of the voices.
He's figured it out, whatever it is. It's cool.
You know what, though? It really goes to show you that people like to always go towards this idea of like, once you're famous, you're locked in and like you're a part of the... But people tend to forget that when people have let's put fame aside, when people have a successful career, such as somebody like Seth Rogen, what you're seeing is, like you said, is somebody that not only built up his niche and his career towards his own audience, like his own demographic, to the point where at this stage in his life, he not only has a portfolio, but he has a whole story, a whole backing, everything that comes with it. So if like Sony comes to him and they're like, Seth, you can't make this. Excuse me? I don't need you to tell me. Like, I don't need your money. I don't need your production. I can do it myself. Yeah. Imagine that. He can say, I can do it myself.
Yeah, that's a different level right there. That's a different level. It
but
takes
it's
a long
it's
time
a level
to get there,
that you can reach if you want to, as an artist or, as a content creator or whatever you are in the industry. No?
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking about M. Night Shyamalan. Dude kills it in Sixth Sense, right? And he kills it, and they let him do whatever he wants. And the music, the movie studios decide that he's dead, like he's not making good movies anymore. He's out, and so he starts to go and use the money he made to produce and fund his own content, and then he takes off again, and he becomes a big deal. What was the big movie that he did that was recent? It wasn't Glass, but it was the one before that with McAvoy. Who was it?
Yeah, it was McAvoy.
Okay.
Yeah, it was James McAvoy. Yeah. What was that? It was where he had split personalities.
Yeah, it was
like
multiple or something. I don't know.
Okay, you said it's James McAvoy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Split? It was Split. That's what it's called.
Yeah,
Split.
It's called Split.
Yeah.
Like if you haven't seen Split, man, that's a crazy movie. Like it's.
Oh my God, he's the guy from Narnia. Okay, I know. All right.
Yeah.
Dude,
he's Professor X.
Got from everything.
Yeah.
He was Professor X.
He was was he the younger Professor X?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, in First Class and Days of Future Past and all those.
Oh my God. Wow. He's a weird. He kind of reminds me of like a monster in a movie.
How so?
There are people, nothing wrong. There are people that are really cut out for example, like, thrillers and horror films. I love me a psychological, like, the psychological thrillers like Alien, or something like that. But there are people that you can put in a movie like that, and their physique or face structure is just perfect to be that prey character.
Yeah.
When you look at them, you're terrified. You're like, what are they going to do?
It's interesting. Paul Dano in the most recent The Batman, like playing the Riddler. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, dude. He was scary.
He was.
He had that look where it's interesting that you say that because there are people that if they can turn it on, they are super creepy. Super
on the eyes. If you can have unhinged eyes, if you can look like crazy eyes, that can do it, man. Doesn't matter what your face looks like. If your eyes can get crazy. Yeah, you can play it.
Just throw in, yeah.
But then Paul Dano was the sweet, soft-spoken dad in The Fabelmans. Mention it again. The Steven Spielberg movie came out last year. Where he's just like kind, hardworking father. Like it's so funny. Dudes who are just malleable like that can be whatever.
And you know what? It drives me crazy on how like. Again, I understand this is all a business, but imagine you have these people that are in the business aspect of, for example, the corporation, business holding and sharing and so on. And they're the ones that are telling the actors what they're supposed to say and not supposed to say and what they're supposed to do. Because according to them, the numbers is the only truth, and that's what the audience wants. And it's like, isn't the whole purpose of having artists is allowing them to have creative thought and approach so you can make creative material? Like I don't understand the logic. I understand money, but like I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. It's just baffling.
Well, I'm in a devil's advocate here. I'm going to go the other side. Marvel Phase 1 through 4 has been way better than Marvel Phase 5 and 6 because they told them what to do in 1 through 4. They had a story they were trying to tell. In 5 or 6, they thought, we're too big to fail. You guys go do whatever you want. Go have fun. It doesn't matter. And those movies have been terrible, awful. I haven't liked very many of them at all.
I'll take a
because
different.
they've let the artists be artists. So I'm like, yeah, maybe there's a compromised middle ground where the artist can be artists, but also they can tell a story that's cohesive and is going somewhere. And I'm not, and what I'm talking about is different from what you're talking about, where money and all that drives everything. I'm thinking more from a story perspective, a story platform. Of like, what's the story dictate versus what the artist wants to do in this moment. So maybe that's a completely different argument, but that just kind of.
I'll take a different run at it. I think that the failure of the movie industry and the film industry is
wokeism.
It's in contrast to the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
So in music industry, they do a really good job of cultivating an artist. Sometimes too much, but there are people where you get them with the right producer, you get them with the right kind of place, and the music that they make begins to blossom and thrive. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Avett Brothers. They're a very folk Americana band.
You said the Everett Brothers?
The Avett Brothers.
Probably not. I mean,
it doesn't matter. The Avett Brothers used to be heavy metal musicians that became folk artists, and they played their instruments like they were still in heavy metal bands, even though it was like a mandolin or whatever, or like a big bass, upright bass. And they put out good music, and they were really great writers. But when they got paired with Rick Rubin, like they exploded. They took off. It became another level of art. Same thing with, any number of artists, you find them doing their music, cultivating and learning and growing. Who you pair them up with makes a difference. And the creativity often gets allowed to be at the front of what's going on. I think with movies, there's not as much cultivation. They don't set people up with a freedom to do what they want. And there's so much money and there's so much expectation on it that everybody starts to get in. Instead of trying to cultivate something, they're trying to save money or make money. And so they know that they've got all this data and all this science that tells them that people like this in movies, and you can't end it this way, and you can't do this. And if you do these things, then it's not going to be as profitable. So you can't do those things. And so then the director is tied from what their creative vision is versus what the studio is making them do. And a lot of these people need to be cultivated. They need to be allowed to be creative. They need to be allowed to do weird and strange things. And it's in those places where they do those weird and strange things where true kind of innovation happens. And I think that I don't know if maybe streaming helps that a little bit, because there's some weird stuff out there that's off the wall. And it's almost like with streaming, there's a little bit more freedom and a little bit more budget as well. And so they can try some of those things. But I think the movie industry is really struggling with that because they don't allow directors to really thrive. They don't cultivate them. They put all kinds of boundaries on them. They put them in a fence and they say, you can only do this in this fence.
The both of you bring up a really great point. And the thing that really ties into comes back to collaboration. Because sometimes, when you're talking about with the music industry, it's very different. And usually, you have that balance of, like, for example, somebody like Rick Rubin that could come there and really know how to tweak this and know how to put this out in the right place and really help it grow and blow up. But when you're dealing with the film industry, a lot of the times, agendas and culture norms come into play. Oh, you can't say this because this could be racist. You can't do this because you're not being inclusive. You can't have this person because they're not a woman, or you can't say this because it's not gender fluid. Whatever there is, keeping in mind that when we're dealing with these things, it's not real life. A movie is a movie. Even a movie that's based on a true story is still not a true story. You're watching a film. And this idea of almost to the point that a film has to depict exactly the way that our world is. Can you imagine if music depicted exactly the way that our world is? We wouldn't listen to music. It'd be boring as shit.
Depressing.
Who wants to fucking listen to the song, I'm going to McDonald's and buying myself food because I have no money? Like, bro, it sucks.
That's not allowed. McDonald's is terrible for you. Yeah, I'm eating a garden salad. That's what you'd have to sing about.
Eating a garden salad at McDonald's is probably the most depressing thing I've heard today. For sure.
God, with the 1,100 calorie dressing. Hey.
Man. That's great.
Yes. So, I was going to ask you guys a question pertaining to your book as well as the podcast. Do you want to elaborate, for example, like how to find things, like your socials, website?
Sure. Yeah, man. We have a website, deadrockstarsbook.com. You can get autographed copies from us, but you can get our book anywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, obviously. It's everywhere you would want to look for a book. Yeah, we're on several different platforms. The Dead Rockstars book on Facebook, the DRS book on Instagram, and DRS book on X, Twitter, whatever it's called, Elon's platform.
Yeah, I'm calling it Twitter.
I still do too. I still do because it is like I think you can put twitter.com, DRS book, and it'll pop up, like if you search it on like on a desktop or whatever.
He has an obsession with the letter X.
Yeah.
But, can you imagine somebody just has a fetish for just a letter?
Hey, you talk about you got enough money, you can do whatever you want.
True.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I will have a fetish for any letter of the alphabet. Listen, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you guys on.
Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm. And my mind went blank for a second. Oh, if you guys want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Lost the Group Pod. So, that, catch you on the next one. All right. We're all about the artist. That is the whole purpose of this podcast, period. And you have a really valuable tool. You can share this with artists, people that are creative, someone that can enjoy this podcast and really enjoy the experience of Lost in the Groove. So, with that, let's jump back to today's episode, shall we? Hey, it's Dave, and I quickly just wanted to jump in and say if you've been enjoying the podcast and enjoying this episode, if you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that'll be so greatly appreciated. Because here's the thing. Someone might read that review and make the choice if they want to listen to the podcast. You get to help grow this podcast with us. How fucking cool is that? Let's jump back to today's episode.